Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 280 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me. And I want to take this moment before we begin to celebrate with you in whatever way you are celebrating this month, whether it is Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. If you are English like me, you also have a Boxing Day and even Omisaka. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I want to make sure that you feel that we are thinking of you today this entire month in whatever way you celebrate. We value you and your opinion and your perspective and your heart and your love. So thank you so much for joining us in celebration in whatever way you want to celebrate today. Now, today I am excited to bring back a returning guest to the Running for Real podcast, a guest who I have not spoken to in a few years, but life has changed a lot for. And I decided that we would use this episode to go over some of the difficult things that are going on for us at this time of year, feeling that things are out of our control. Maybe we're feeling that we're not okay. The feelings of failure that we can sometimes experience. And how difficult it can be to share about what is going on right now within each of our individual lives. So I thought I would bring back on Josh Lifrak to the show. Now, Josh was on the podcast in a previous episode. I will put a link in the show notes for you to go take a listen to that one if you have not already listened to it. It is a great one. It was from our mental training week and it is a very popular one. So I will put a link to that in the show notes. Now, Josh is a mental performance coach. He is a keynote speaker, and he was the director of mental skills for the Chicago Cubs when they won the World Series. So he definitely knows his stuff. He's also become a friend and someone who loves to pass along inspiring content related to running to me sometimes, as he is a runner himself. Now, you will get to hear more about his own running journey in the previous episode with Josh. But today, as I mentioned, we're more talking about some of the difficult things that we can be working through right now during this time. So without any further ado, I would like to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, and we'll be right to the episode with Josh Lifrak. Our next partner has a product I use literally every single day. I started taking Athletic Greens because I heard that there were 75 whole food source ingredients, the antioxidant equivalent of 12 servings of fruits and vegetables, and it just sounded like the ideal thing I needed to fit in the nutritional gaps. You know, I didn't have the time, and I was at a place where, as much as I wanted to look after my health, I felt like I wasn't doing a great job. I wanted something that actually tasted good. I hated taking pills and vitamins and all kinds of other things, and I wanted to see what the hype was about. So what is this stuff, if you are asking? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, as I said, you are absorbing that 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens. It's going to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, aging, all the things. I take it every morning, the first thing I do when I wake up. AG1 helps me to have energy. I love that it is the way that I can get my day started. It gets my digestive system going, and it is something that I send to my family and friends, the people I care about the most in this world, as a gift, because I just want to take care of them and I believe in everything that they are doing. Now, I love Athletic Greens for the ingredients they have, but I also think it is the one thing that has all the best things. They use the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations. And they also have third-party testing, which I think is great, and not everyone does that. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, something really important to us as runners, and it costs you less than $3 a day. If you're investing in your health, it's cheaper than that coffee habit that we tend to get ourselves hooked on. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews, by the way. It's not just me saying this. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially as we head into cold and flu season. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. Just that. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a 1-year free supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Tina. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Tina to take ownership of your health. Pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance, and you can get that special offer in Canada, the US, and Europe. Josh, welcome back to the Running for Real podcast. It's been a few years, but excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Tina. Yeah, pumped to be here. I was just saying, like, how great it is to see old friends. You know, like I've been kind of underground for the last 2 years, so popping my head back out and getting to hang out with everybody, it's great.
Okay, so tell the listeners, I will put a link in the show notes to the previous episode with you where we talked about your running journey, what you did, being the director of the mental skills program at the Chicago Cubs. But you just mentioned there that you've been underground for a few years. Not that anyone has been really above ground for 2 years, but for you, what does that mean?
Yeah, so the pandemic, right? So that's part of it, obviously. But then over the last year, I was the major league mental performance coach for the New York Mets. And so when you go into a major league situation, it's like you're just like, you have like 2 hours a day to yourself, right? And then the whole rest of the time, you're just in the clubhouse and you're working with the guys and doing that. So that was 9 months, right? So and probably 2 years is probably wrong because like the year of the pandemic, I was on my laptop and reaching out and talking to people. But the last 9 months, I've certainly been just kind of in it, right? Like you're in the middle of the season, you're just in the middle of this, and it's like this tiny little group of 40 guys, and you just disappear. It was funny, actually. I remember this. I came home. I got out of the clubhouse one day at Yom Kippur. My wife is from Israel. We practice Judaism. It was Yom Kippur, so I came home for Yom Kippur. It's the Day of Atonement, holiest day, really, in the Jewish calendar, and so you just shut off your phones and your computers and all that, and you shut it down. But I took a commercial flight home. We had been flying when you're with a professional team, you fly charters. So it's like, bus to the tarmac, you walk upstairs, you're on a plane, you land at another airport, you go down, you get in a bus, and you end up at a hotel, right? And I was walking so I flew home and I took a commercial flight, and had to transfer in Atlanta, and I was walking through the Atlanta airport, and I was like, oh my gosh, like people, like humanity, like the real world, like, whoa, what? Like, it was really like I had to kind of like stop for a second, and like there was just like normal human beings walking around, and it was refreshing on a lot of levels, to be honest with you. But it was really kind of, that's what I mean by I was underground, right? Like I was in this little bubble of baseball where you're literally talking to maybe only 40 people. That's the radius of your conversation. Your scope is 40 people. So.
But what you mentioned there, for many people listening, that might sound like the coolest job in the world. So why would you ever change that? So what do you tell us about your decision then?
So there's two things. Number one is you're away from your family a lot, right? So for 9 months, I spent more time with. I always used to joke about this with Rafa. Rafa Fernandez was one of the hitting coaches for the Mets, and he and I would spend a ton of time together because we would watch the game from the cage. Lots of different rules in Major League Baseball in terms of who can be in the dugout, who can't be in the dugout, all that kind of stuff. So he and I would always end up in the cage because guys would come into the cage. You could talk to them between at-bats, et cetera. And he and I spent like every single day together. And we even sat next to each other on the plane, and our lockers were right next to each other. And I spent more time with Rafa than I did with my wife this year. Right. Like that's that's a little out of kilter, right? So that was number one. Number two is that, my sphere of influence was tiny. It was, it's just these 40 guys. Yes, what they say and what they do in the press has a large reach. And we saw that with the Chicago Cubs when we won the World Series. I've mentioned this before, there was 5 million people at the parade. It was the 7th largest gathering in human history, which still is like mind boggling to me. But so that had a lot of scope and a lot of reach, and the work that we did there with that small group of guys had a massive reach. But for me, what I started to realize, because I was talking to over the past, really since 2017, I've been working also with a lot of different companies, a lot of different CEOs, a lot of different leadership in terms of just the corporate world. And I was seeing how what we teach in sports has this incredible reach into the corporate world, and how many people haven't gotten that education. And it was eye-opening for myself to go into companies and talk to them and have them have these moments of aha and these moments where their lives were getting impacted. And that's really, I recently did a kind of a values. I went through my values. I don't know if anybody else does that. Maybe it's just me because I'm in mental performance. But I was going through this thing of checking in with what my values were and if I was aligned with my values. And one of my biggest values in terms of work is contribution. And so I was realizing that I could have a bigger reach, a bigger scope of contribution in the world if I were to move away from sports.
Okay, so I want to, let's firstly, as we've never done this before, you said doing a check-in to see if you align with your values. Now, someone listening might hear that or maybe even read it in a book, but what does that look like? If someone wanted to directly do that, they're feeling that kind of unease in their stomach that their life maybe isn't where they want it to be, but I mean, what does that even mean? Tell us what did you do there?
Yeah, I literally was, so one of the companies I work for is a company called Limitless Minds. It's a great company out of Seattle. It's owned by Russell Wilson, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. And the company goes into different companies and teaches mindset training as a performance enhancer, much like we would do with an Olympic running team or whatever it might be, right? But so one of the things is we were developing some of the content is we were doing a values proposition, what are we really looking at? So we're looking at work, play, family, and love. Those are the 4 components that we wanted to look at, and what were our values in those. So literally it was just a sheet of paper, and it had a bunch of words that when you can just download these off the internet, there's a ton of them, but it was just basically a sheet with probably, 50 words on it that were describing different types of values. And that was a good starter for me to just check into that and be like, oh, what exactly are my values? My values in the past had been, winning was a huge value of mine. I've always wanted to be around winners. And I wanted to win a lot. As I've grown and I've gotten older, winning is kind of secondary to relationships and contribution and love and those types of things. So for me, it was looking at that and kind of diving into it and going, oh, what am I really about?
So this is a regular practice that you would encourage people to do. When you said that, you said winning used to be important to you. I think sometimes when people think of values, they think that's solid. This is something for life. You're saying that these change throughout life.
Yeah. People change. Circumstances change, right? Right. The weather changes. Everything changes, right? Change is inevitable. Growth is optional, right? That's the old Ray Kroc phrase that my friend Trevor Moad always used to say. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. And so that's the whole thing is you are always changing. If you're not evolving, right, you're not going anywhere. So.
Okay.
I mean, I used to run marathons, Tina. I can barely run 3 miles now, right? There's some change.
That's true. Yeah. Well, we all know that feeling of losing running fitness and wondering how you could possibly ever have done what you used to do. I certainly feel that quite often, not in terms of distance, but for me, it's more in terms of seems mind blowing the pace I used to run at. But I think everyone listening can understand that. And then you said about leaving this role for someone who is feeling that unease and feeling like they want to make a change? Maybe the pandemic has shown them what they really don't like, or what is where they want to be going. What advice would you give to that person? Because that had to be a pretty scary decision for you to make. I mean, leaving this cushy thing that you probably, when you were younger, would have dreamed of doing, and stepping away from that. So tell us about like how you felt in that moment and how you worked through that.
Yeah. So the scary part wasn't the decision to leave. The scary part was, wow, can I pull this off? Right? Like, can I financially still be stable? Can I still have the impact? Will I be of value or of service to anybody? Right? Like, because like literally, I mean, you're talking to me right now. I'm in my home office. I like upstairs and got a painting behind me, right? And I've been in front of this laptop for hours on end today. And so you wonder, like, can I do it? Will I have the breadth and the scope, the reach to make an impact still? Was remarkable about the pandemic is the ability to do things remotely now, right? Like I had a client that was in Saudi Arabia, right? Mm-hmm. Like if that had been a client in the pre-pandemic, there's like, it just wouldn't have happened, right? I wouldn't be getting on a plane every other week to go there, but every week I could flip open the laptop and we'd have a conversation. Mm-hmm. So, that like those types of things, right? That definitely changed. And then shoot, I was home for a year straight, right? Like I was home from pandemic start. I was home from February to February. Like I was with my family every single day. That was the first time I've been with my family for 6 straight years, every single day. And so that was an eye opener too, about the joy that I felt and the love that I felt, and how important it was, not only for myself, but for my partner, my amazing wife, Karen, incredible realtor, by the way. If anybody wants a house in Sarasota, Florida, come on down. She'll hook you up. My 2 kids, right? Like I'm coaching my kids. That's what I'm doing after this call. I'm going to coach my kids' 10-year-old basketball game. Like I was never able to do that kind of stuff. So that was huge. But the advice I would give to somebody who's going through that change is that it's not a straight shot. Like it's never going to be a straight shot. I worked for 2 years to be able to move on. Like it was hustle. Like I said, I only had like 2 or 3 hours a day. I was hustling my butt off during those 2 or 3 hours a day, trying to find ways to cultivate clients, to have connections, to, join a group like the Limitless Minds group. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens with deliberate intention and action. And so that's one thing I've always found, Tina, and you're probably along the lines of the same way, is that, action is a great cure for anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. Like just getting moving and getting the wheel going. Do you have similar things for you? Does that resonate?
Well, actually what comes to mind with that stuff is actually the climate anxiety that I feel about, I have 2 young kids, and I know you have kids too. Like, what world am I leaving them in? And I get like myself really wrapped up in imagining what world they're going to be living in when they're my age. But then I do find, when I do something, when I take a step, even if it's something that I feel nervous going to do it, I find that anxiety just melts away because I'm doing something rather than just sitting there dwelling in the what ifs. And so at least I know I'm trying. I think that definitely is the case. And
it goes back to running, right? Where are you the most nervous at any race? Set, right? When they bring the gun up, right? Like that 2 minutes, that 5 minutes right before you go into it, it's like, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And everything comes back to running in some way of like the analogies for life. It's insane. The amount of ways it comes back to running in some way or another. So, but I think you're absolutely right in terms of, taking action, even if it's some small step, because like you said, you have no time. And let's talk about that then, because this time of year, the holiday period, is the time when people really struggle with overwhelm, with, there's so much going on. There's so many requests for people. There's so many demands and things to do. And and pressure to kind of the keeping up with the Joneses stuff. So if someone's feeling that right now, that they're constantly failing, they feel like they can't do it all, it's been a tough year in general, what would you say to that person?
Sure. I'm feeling the same way. So number one, you're not alone, right? A lot of times I think that feeling of overwhelm, you just feel like you're alone in the world, right? And you're just like, I can't do it all. I can't manage it. That's number one. Number two is the thought that kept coming to mind as you were kind of laying out that scenario is something Joe Madden, who was the manager of the Cubs when I was there, and now he's the manager of the Angels out in California and Los Angeles. He always used to say, be present, not perfect. And I love that. And I thought that was awesome, because I think a lot of the overwhelm comes from, we feel like we have to do everything. We feel like we have to be everything for everybody and all this stuff. Well, the reality is you can't, right? There's just not enough time in the day. And so that attempt to be perfect and to take care of everything and everyone, it's not realistic. And I think once you accept that, then you can kind of move past it in a lot of ways. Like, okay, that's just the way it is, versus me trying to like beat my head against the wall or, like plunge the toilet 50,000 times. Like at a certain point, it's not going to work. So just accept that and then kind of divert and maybe come up with a different plan.
For a runner, being a devil's advocate here, for a runner, if you're not like this, then you probably know plenty of people who are, but many runners are these type A. You're saying like, just accept it, just kind of let go of trying to be that perfectionist. As a recovering perfectionist, maybe even very early on that scale, you can say, okay, I get that. I know I'm supposed to do that. How do I do that? What would you say?
Right. So my answer is, I'm going to refer, rolling back, Trevor Moawad, I mentioned him earlier. He was one of my mentors, and he wrote a spectacular book called It Takes What It Takes. If you have not read that book, it is a great read. Trevor was 48 years old when he passed away from cancer earlier this year. And one of the things that he always talked about was staying neutral. And what that meant was there's an acceptance. There's an acceptance of what's so, right? He always talked about it in terms of, his best friend was Russell Wilson. And he always talked about Russell going into, having 4 interceptions in the first half. And he wasn't coming into the huddle and being like, hey guys, we're doing great. It was, okay, this is what's happened. Here's how we move forward. And I think that acceptance of it, like a lot of times we hear, gotta be positive, gotta be positive, gotta be positive. Well, the reality is there's things to not be positive about. Like Trevor passed away. I wasn't positive about losing a friend, right? That's not like I'm not overjoyed about him not being here. But I look back at his life and I go, that guy lived 90 years and 48, right? He had a full life. And so I can celebrate that. Do I miss him? Do I want to pick up the phone and call him? Heck yeah. And it hurts when I can't. But the reality is he left this great legacy. And now, I'm working with the company that he and Russell founded. And so I have a legacy to carry on. So for me, it's that acceptance is I can't change that, right? You can't change what's already happened, but your actions can change what happens in the future, right? The past is not predictive of the future, but what you're doing in the present is. And so that goes back to what we just talked about, be present, not perfect.
Thank you to Zencastr for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for keeping us afloat in every way in terms of our podcasting needs. I can't imagine my life without Zencastr now. We use it for Running Realized. We use it for Running for Real. And podcasting remotely can be a real challenge, but it doesn't have to be. And that's where Zencastr comes in and really shines. It's this all-in-one web-based solution that makes the process quick and painless the way it probably should be. Now, if you know me, you know that I like to keep things real. And I love that Zencastr is able to give me that quality I can rely on without also me having to make things be perfect or make things be, feeling inauthentic to me. They have this high quality that provides crystal clear sound and this gorgeous HD video that allows me to communicate and connect with my guests to take the podcast to the next level. And I want to mention, it is so easy to use, even for my guests that aren't tech savvy. There is nothing to download. They just click on the link and we start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-productions in the tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get the episode done. If you want to have the same easy experience as I do for all my podcasting and content needs, you can go to zencastr.com/pricing and enter code running4real. That's the word for running for real. And you will get 30% off your first 3 months. That's zencastr.com/pricing. And you can use code running4real to get 30% off your first 3 months. It's time for you to share your story. And pulling on that a little bit more with the feeling out of control, while we're potentially coming out the other side of this pandemic, there's a lot of burnout that's been, piling on our shoulders for the last year. There's still a lot that we can't control, can't see, can't tell what's coming. I mentioned about the climate. There's a lot of conversations going on about that, and not just because I'm obsessed with it, but in general, like I'm hearing from other people, they're thinking about it a lot. For people who do struggle with that feeling out of control, obviously what you mentioned there, present, not perfect, trying to be in acceptance is obviously one way to work through that. And we also talked about taking action, but for someone who's struggling with just the buildup of what this pandemic has brought to us on top of life in general, do you have any thoughts for that person?
Go take a nap. Right? Just go take a nap. You'll wake up, it'll be different. No, I think there's two elements there. One of which sounds like content, like what content you're ingesting into your life.
Okay.
Right. So, what do we know about the news? I can't remember the exact stats, so excuse me, but I remember reading a study where, if you had watched 3 to 5 minutes or ingested 3 to 5 minutes of news, either through websites or on CNN or on the TV or Fox or whatever it might be, 3 to 5 minutes in the morning, you were 35% more likely to say you had a horrible day at the end of the night.
Wow.
Right. I read that stat and I was like, I just stopped reading news. Right. Because what does news do? How does news work? It works. Is it a publicly owned company? Is it we're just trying to get information out? No. Right. They are for-profit companies. Then they make their profit through getting clicks and getting viewers to stay on their channels. Right. That's how they do it. And so what they figured out is that we have a negativity bias, right?
Yeah. I
can't remember if I shared this stat on the last podcast with you, but 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, right? It's the National Science Institute, 60 to 80,000 thoughts, 75 to 90% of those are typically negative. It's a survival instinct, right? That's why we have it. It's helping us stay alive, right? It's keeping us out of danger. It's protecting us. That doesn't help us thrive. It just helps us survive. And so as you're going through this, right, and you're looking at climate and you're looking at climate and you're looking at climate, that sounds like, hey, there's a climate story, let me click on it. There's a climate story, let me click on it. And guess what? Your computer and your phone, there's an algorithm that says, hey, Tina likes climate stories. Let's just feed her more climate stories. Boom, boom, boom. And guess what? There's an advertisement here too for rain boots, right? Seriously. Right. And so, or house insurance or whatever it might be. Right. And so that's the way it works. I don't know. Have you ever watched that Netflix, the
social dilemma?
The social dilemma? Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. So stressful to watch that.
Totally freaked me out too. Freaked me out. I literally shut my phone off for a week.
Yeah. You want to throw it away. Oh, get away from me.
My favorite part about that one was when they were interviewing the engineers and they're like, yeah, we have no clue what the algorithm's doing anymore. I was like, oh dear Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when they said that they can't help checking stuff either. And you're like, if they can't stop, what hope do we have?
Right.
Well, I mean, in some ways that is the control piece though, right? Because at least are we just fighting a losing battle in some ways? Probably, yeah. But okay, so then from that, what can we do to, I mean, you mentioned about the news there. So talk about obviously, not looking at the news, but then where do you weigh the balance between needing to know things because caring about other human beings and all that stuff? What would you say there?
So my point was on that was the key word was ingesting. And what I mean by ingesting is it's one thing to see the title of an article. It's another thing to read 5 articles on the January 6th, attacks on the Capitol, right? Mm-hmm, or to read 20 articles on when Donald Trump's going to get arrested, or to read, how many wildfires there are in Australia and in California, right? Like it's one thing to see those things. It's another thing to dive down that rabbit hole and read article after article after article about it. So that's I think the big thing for me is if you do need to be informed of what's going on, or for example, my wife went to Israel this summer, and we needed to know what was going on over there. Was it a horrible situation in terms of the pandemic? How many people had gotten vaccinated, et cetera? So, we read a couple articles on it, and then obviously you talk to people on the ground, right? But I remember, Tina, it's funny because you think about Israel. I remember I've been to Israel a number of times again because my wife is from there. Have you ever been over there? Have you ever run over there?
No, I'd like to. No, yeah.
Beautiful. The Tel Aviv, it's gorgeous. Beach for miles, great waves, amazing food, all the food. So
yeah.
So I've been there a number of times throughout my life, and three of the different times there was a war going on, because that's what happens, right? So much so that I remember I was supposed to meet a cousin. This is before major cell phone technology, in terms of being able to connect with people internationally, right? They didn't have WhatsApp and stuff like that back then. Mm-hmm. So WhatsApp, I could be in Israel and shoot a text message to somebody without getting charged $75, right? So it's really. So I was supposed to meet a cousin for coffee, and he never showed up. And I was like, what happened? I ended up calling my wife and from a payphone, I believe. And then we figured it out. I'd seen him that night. That next morning he got called up to go to Lebanon, and he was in a tank, right? That's the immediacy of war there. But what was really interesting about that is I remember watching the news while we were there. And it was international news, right? It was the CNN from Europe or whatever it was, or the BBC. And it was horror, the Israel under siege, And it was I'm in Sarasota, Florida. So it would be if there was a war going on in Pensacola, I wouldn't really feel it, right? Because it's so far removed from me. I was in Tel Aviv. It was up in the north on the Lebanese border. So outside of knowing some people that were in it, you never felt it. But the way that the news portrayed it, it was you couldn't walk outside without a bomb hitting next to your feet, right? In Tel Aviv, So, and that's kind of that's what I'm saying. It's we need to know what was going on because our cousins were there, but it's at a certain point, it's the same thing over and over and over again. And it's just negative, horrific, scary, right? Scary movies sell, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So then what if someone is finding themselves can't stop? Because, I follow you on Twitter, and, and I see you tweet sometimes, so you are on Twitter, but then, Twitter for me is a perfect example of that's often where I get sucked in, because I go with a purpose, but that freaking stupid trending thing on the side is what sucks me in sometimes. And so what do you, with that, I actually stay away from the news for the most part as well, but that is the one thing that gets me is Twitter. So how do you work through your life with that when we all have a weakness area, right? I took Twitter and Facebook and all of them off my phone, but on the desktop, it can still get me because of the trending thing. So give us some suggestions for those of us who are hooked.
So two things. Okay, this is really interesting. So I had the opportunity to be around a baseball player named Marcus Stroman this year. He's an African-American pitcher. He's about 5'10". He's just like full of energy, super positive person. And he showed me that apparently there's a thing you can do in Twitter where it can block all negative things. Cause he would get, like, you wouldn't believe some of the racist comments he would get on his Twitter feed. It's awful. Right. So there's a way you can block anything negative coming through. Right. Like, so I don't know. I couldn't remember how to do that, but apparently there is a way that you can do that.
Okay. Good. Good to research.
Number two, in terms of the stuff that you can control, setting an intention, right? Like, so this is one of my big things I've been doing recently is deciding how I'm going to be before I enter into different situations, whether it be, giving a lecture to, 80 corporate executives or jumping on this podcast or whatever it might be. But you can set an intention for why you're going on to Twitter, right? Because why do we typically go on to Twitter? Why do you typically go on to Twitter?
To be 100% honest, because I want to see if I have any notifications myself. Like, I want to see if someone's mentioned me or sent me anything. Like, it's ego stuff.
Right. That's totally normal, right? That's totally normal.
Yeah.
The dopamine hit you get when you get a notification that somebody's following you or like something that you posted or retweeted something is equivalent to that of winning at a slot machine in Las Vegas.
Yes, I've had, so
just social dilemmas. Right. So, yeah, exactly. So that's normal. Okay. Number two. Okay. So if you're going in just to check your notifications and there's no notifications, why are you still in there?
Because then you see the trending thing. Or I will see the trending thing of something that's going on that makes me like, what's that? And then, you click over there and then you scroll down. And I'm not saying I do this a ton. I would say on Twitter, I probably spend less than 10 minutes a day, including wherever I end up from there. But that for me is, and I'm sure everyone listening has some area that for me, and especially when the social dilemma, the guy said, email, that's one that they all talked about, like refreshing their email. We all have something, but it's one thing to know what you're doing. And sometimes, I don't know if you feel this, but sometimes I even can there's like that voice of reason in my head that's like, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't care. You don't need to know this information. Get off. And I just, kind of like, shh, I'm busy, And this is me just being honest with you, but that's kind of what
leave me alone. I'm scrolling. Come on.
Yeah, well, exactly. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I totally feel that. There's a doom scroll period. Two things. Okay. So off of that, if you're going to go into Twitter, set an alarm.
Mm-hmm. Or whatever your
little watch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just set a timer to go off and just be like, okay, it's been 5 minutes. I'm out. So you can set a time frame.
Yeah. So do you think it's okay to be, for those of us listening is it okay to spend a bit of time kind of like, in England we say faffing around or just kind of I don't know what the American equivalent is.
That's a great...
Yeah,
just messing around, just kind of scrolling and playing
kind
around.
Kind of you're not doing anything.
I think if you're intentional about it, if you decide, I'm going to go fuff around, which is really fun to say, by the way. I'm going to go in, I'm going to fuff around, and I'm going to, I'm going to do it, and I'm only going to do it for 5 minutes. Let me just go. Okay. I'm going in for entertainment purposes right now. Right? If you can decide that, then you can decide that. Right. It makes the big key is that right now the phones use us. Yes. We don't use the phones. That's the big key. Social media uses us. We don't use social media. So how do you flip that narrative on its head? Intention.
Okay. So then what about the other piece of where we mindlessly do things? I mean, I'm sure you have experienced this, and we all have, where you don't even register you clicking on something or typing it. It's just automatic. And before you know it, you're there. So you said about having an intention, but what about those mindless moments where you just, standing in line and you just automatically go for it?
Yeah, I've honestly, right. It's not mental magic. It's mental training. It's mental skills. It's mental performance. It's mental toughness, right? Like that. I've trained myself I really have. And the way I've trained myself is through meditation. And so the practice of meditation is really the way I learned it. I learned from Dr. Missy Jha at the University of Miami, who is like, she's all over it right now. She just wrote a book, so she's everywhere. But the thing that I was taught there was about meditation is really about the art of noticing. And it's about noticing your own thoughts, and it's about noticing your own feelings and emotions and stuff like that without judgment. And so one of the big keys for me is I do this all the time. It's really interesting. And I don't know when I started doing it, but I will, like if I'm in a group or we're on a train or I'm in line to go through security at an airport or whatever, I'm like, I'll watch to see how long it takes people to like pull out their phones. And usually it's instantaneous. But what's really interesting is when one person pulls out their phone, 7 people pull out their phone. Right? You can see it like at a dinner parties too. Like, I don't know if you've ever done this. You're out to friends.
Yes, I have noticed that actually.
Right. Yeah. And so as soon as one person gets a notification, like everybody's having a conversation, one person who's on the side of the conversation, not even in the conversation, kind of just on the periphery of it, gets a notification. Then they pick up the phone to kind of just check it. It might be, hey, my son got home or whatever. Right? Like I have this thing on my phone, Life 360. It tells me where my son is. Right. He's 14. So I want to know where my kid is. And maybe it's something like that. And they look at it and they put their phone away. Everybody else stops their conversation and goes to their phones. Like, it's incredible. Like, these things are just like hooked into us. And so that's like, I've been able to step back from it a little bit and really just take notice of it. So, for me, it really is, it's like, I'm pretty intentional about when I use it. I've stopped bringing it to breakfast. Like, I sit on my back porch now and I have breakfast. I have my mindful breakfast, where I'm eating in silence. Maybe my kid's there with me, which is great. That's even better if my 10-year-old or my 14-year-old's eating breakfast with me. But typically I'm alone and birds are playing out in the breeze and, I'm just out there kind of watching the world go by. And it's like a great way to get grounded.
Thank you to Inside Tracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I have been using Inside Tracker for many years now. It is a great way to see the difference between what is right and what is right for you. The answer is in your data, just you, specific you. So Inside Tracker recognizes that no two bodies are the same. We are all unique, and our nutrition plan should be too. It's going to help you optimize your body using science and technology to deliver an ultra personalized guidance through their experts. They're going to guide us to our goals, guide you to your goals through their cutting edge algorithmic engine. It's going to analyze your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle habits, and guide you to goals with actionable recommendations. They're going to tell you what you need to do and why. It's going to track your progress and be able to adjust based on real-time feedback from your body. So all you're going to do is you're going to set yourself up to go get yourself some blood work. You're going to tell them a bit about yourself, about your habits, about your lifestyle. They're going to set you up with a goal-oriented action plan along with nutrition, fitness, and lifestyle recommendations that are going to be based on these ultra personalized recommendations that they have for you based on which of your numbers from your blood work are in the needs work category, the at risk, and optimized. So then you know which things you need to work on. They're going to give you specific things to consume that work for you and your body, and you'll be able to track your progress. So as your body improves, your blood biomarkers are going to change as well, and you will retest and see how you're doing. It is customizable, it is simple, it is based on you. There is a reason so many people are loving Inside Tracker. You will see it all over the place, but I cannot recommend them enough for what you are going to get with this personalized service. So my friends, you as a Running for Real listener and a friend of mine can get yourself 20% off the entire website by going to insidetracker.com/Tina. That will get you a special offer and you can check out their plans. You can see which one works for you and you can get yourself set up to go get tested. There are testing facilities all over the US, so you don't have to worry about not being able to find one. I guarantee you there is one near you. Thank you so much to Inside Tracker for sponsoring this episode. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I've noticed that more with, when I used to run professionally, I very rarely ran with music or podcasts or anything.
Yeah, never.
And then when I stopped and when I started running again, I very much got into the habit of that. And I justified it as, oh, well, I never get the time to listen to things otherwise, which was true. Like, I have 2 young kids. I don't get commuting drives. I don't really get much time where I could listen to things. So I could justify it that way. But then a previous podcast guest, and I've talked about this before, Mishka Shubali, he said to me, like, why do you need to listen to something? And I thought, well, why do I? And so he was like, do you think you could do a challenge to not do it? And then he like poked that like competitive part of me in like, you know, do you think you could not do it? And I was like, yes, I could not do it. Watch me. And so, but then since that was like probably 4 months ago, and I haven't run with music once. And I have to say, like, I enjoy my run, even though there's nothing to distract me. I enjoy my runs 10 times more than I was when I was listening to things. And for me, it's kind of the same thing as, you know, I don't know if you feel this, but when you're on like a overnight, or at least when I'm on an overnight flight or a long haul flight to internationally, I watch movies, but I'm only really watching them to pass the time, because I'm like, once this movie's over, then that's another 2 hours gone. So I just have to get through this movie. And then so you're not even really enjoying the movie because you're just using it as a like time pass. And so I think it was very much that with the podcast. And so my runs have been so much more enjoyable just being mindful and being out there, especially without that layer of like expectation that I used to have. So I don't do it with breakfast, but I do it with my runs, which is good.
Yeah, it's changing the purpose of your run, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's going from I'm going out to get exercise and be healthy to I'm going out to have an experience. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, yeah. I'm injured right now. I haven't been able to run since Milwaukee. I put things in the time frames in terms of like the cities we were visiting when I was with the Mets. But that was my last run. It was a 4-mile run. I was around the lake. It was gorgeous. It was an amazing run. And I pulled my hamstring later on that day. So I haven't been able to run since then. And it's been, what are we in November? So it's 6 weeks since I've been on a run. And I miss it. Like that feeling of just like hearing birds, hearing wind, feeling your breath, your chest, right? Feeling the ground under your feet moving away, sweat, starting to build up, like all those little pieces, you forget about them so quick. And if I had music in, you'd never even think about those things.
So true.
And by the way, I don't know about you, but like my creative mind, like when I'm running, all the best ideas come to me.
Yes.
Every single one.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's what Mishka was saying was like, the last 10 minutes, that's where like the gold comes through. And I was like, oh yeah, it kind of does. And it's right. It was right. And yeah, I very much changed the way I've been viewing runs again, which is good. But okay. So then moving on with this, what do you think we need to talk about right now? What is something that you're noticing within society, within the running world, within whatever area? What do you think is something that's going on that we should cover?
Yeah, I think, as we have been talking, like it's like taking back control of our own thoughts and taking back control of our own intentions. We're going down this, like the movie WALL-E. Right? You've seen WALL-E.
Oh, don't get me started on that movie. That is like my greatest fear. It's coming true. It is coming true.
Absolutely coming true. Yes.
Yeah.
I hate that. 1984, both of them. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, so that's the only way that stops is we decide to do something different. Right. So I think that's the biggest thing is like us making a conscious decision for our own direction in our own minds. And deciding how we want to be on a daily basis. And that's the whole key, like setting your intention, isn't it? Like I took a course years ago and they talked about being, doing, and having, right? And that being is the framework of it. Like making sure that we are being first, because everything flows off of that. When you decide who you're going to be, then your actions kind of align with that. And it goes back to the values conversation we were talking about earlier. But I don't know if people know what their values are. I know they know what their political agendas are, but do they really even know what those are? Or are they being told those? And my belief is that they're being told those. They're being like, they're not really even. I worked for one of my many, many jobs out of college was I did a little work in public relations, PR. And I didn't know my head from my hand at that point. And the person that ran the firm told me, he's like, the best way to learn how to write a press release is to open up the Wall Street Journal and copy the first 3 paragraphs of the first 5 articles you see, because those are all press releases. And I was like, oh my gosh, crazy. So then I just started writing those, you just copy them, blah, 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 and you get pretty good at writing press releases. And that was like an eye-opener for me on a lot of different levels too. Like, again, it's like this prescription versus a decision. And that's free will. Like that's the thing I want people to really start buying back into, right? A decision to be made. And then based on a value, right? I think most people in this country truly do care about those around them. They really do. Like, it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum. Like, the guy who lives across the street from me is the exact opposite political affiliation as I am. Like, the exact opposite. And we get along great, right? And the reason we get along great is because our kids are the same age and we like our street and we want them to be happy and they want us to be happy, and we're always talking and we're like all sorts, you know what I mean? But we just don't talk about politics because we know, like, I've seen the flag in his front yard versus, what I got on my poster board, right? So it's like they know. And actually, during the election, the whole street decided we're not going to put up anything. We're not doing it. Like, we just know how divisive that's going to be. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But that was a decision, right? That wasn't prescribed to us. Like, and that's the whole key for me. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No, thank you for that.
My Justin Sua, you met Justin, right?
Yes,
Justin.
Yeah.
He always talks about doing things with purpose, on purpose. Mm-hmm. With purpose, on purpose. That's it. And how often do we not do that?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then let's transition into some positive. Firstly, what is something you're inspired by right now?
Well, the more that I get out there and the more that I'm dealing with different clients and different, executives from across this country, I'm just seeing this reality of understanding mental well-being and how important it is. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing this uptick in empathy. So that totally inspires me. Like, cause I think that's the whole key, right?
Yeah,
like if
absolutely.
We're more empathetic towards each other, like we'll start taking care of the climate, right? Like that is just like natural, right? Like that they kind of go hand in hand. So I'm seeing it in like companies, right? And when you're dealing with like, that's really a lot of times the driver of a lot of different things, especially in this country, believe it or not, right? We think our political system is, but it's really, there's a lot of companies that have a big say in what happens. So, the more we see that'll be pretty cool. So I'm just seeing this uptick in empathy. So that makes me excited and hopeful.
Good. Yeah, that is good to hear. Definitely.
I saw a couple of dolphins on the beach the other day. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. Like, hopefully they were in the water, right?
Yeah, I was on my paddleboard and I was like, they swam under me. It was crazy. But that's cool. That's the type of stuff, Tina, when you like see stuff like that, like you're just like, oh, like awe, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just like,
I was once on a paddleboard and a whale came like underneath the front and up. Yeah, like I could see the barnacles or whatever those things are on its back. Like it came right up in front of my, like under my paddleboard. And I will never forget that moment. It was one of my like top 10 moments in life because it was so surreal that I was out there in California and it just, there was this giant whale like right underneath me. Like it could have easily knocked me over. It went right underneath, but it came up just past me. And yeah, so I feel that. And I like at that, I feel thankful for that time that we didn't have at that time phones. You wouldn't dare take a phone out onto the water. So I didn't have my phone or anything. And so I was just there. And yes, I have that like memory, but had it been now, I often wonder, would I have scrambled to grab my phone to take a picture of it? But instead I could just take it in and like really be like, wow, that's a whale. I think about that a lot.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I was just about to say, like, I don't think it really happened because it wasn't on Instagram, right? Like, it's not true. It didn't really happen unless it's on Instagram. Come on, we know that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it does feel that way with things, but
that's I love that though, because I was just thinking, like, I was flipping back to one of the great memories I've recently had is my son's bar mitzvah. It was like this glorious day, and it was like I was so connected to everything, and I was just kind of trying to figure out why. And it was like, oh yeah, we had a professional photographer there. Like, we didn't have to worry about taking a single picture the whole time. Yeah, it was done. Yeah. You just didn't even touch your phone.
Yeah. No, it is such a great point that remove the temptations and the reasons to take those, because at the end of the day, it always makes me laugh how we try and take pictures of things that never come out as well. But then you never are in that moment because you're thinking about the photos that you're going to look at, but then you miss the actual experience. So I'm all for anything we can do to try and get away from that. And
but it goes back to this, and I think we should be kind of like, I'm just like recognizing we've been kind of bashing on the phone and the social media and stuff.
I bash on social media all the time.
but I mean, I think the reality is, right, they are tools. They are tools to help your podcast grow, to help my business grow, to help, Limitless Minds expand into different areas, right? Like that's real, right? And so that, and believe me, without it, like, you're missing out on a lot. Like, I just started diving into LinkedIn, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, look at how many people I'm meeting on LinkedIn. It's awesome. But the big key, like we've talked about over and over again, is us using the tools rather than the tools using us. Right. And so it's just, it might be like, it might be just having a schedule, right? Like, I remember, just having that, like, I remember the 4-Hour Work Week. You ever read that? Tim Ferriss? Yeah. Right. And he talks in there about, like, he would schedule his time to be checking emails. Yeah. That's brilliant. I thought, like, I've always kind of kept that in the back of my head. I don't follow it at all. Yeah. But, like, that would be amazing. Yeah. Like, just to have that outgoing message. Listen, I answer my emails from 11 to 1 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. every day. If you get this message and it's past 1 p.m., I'll respond tomorrow. Yeah. That's brilliant. Like, I might start doing that, but like.
But Tim Ferriss also, as you know, doesn't have, he lives a very different life to, I would say, most people listening, just in terms of, like, many of our listeners might have a like, I get the sentiment there that you're saying, like, stick to the time, pick what the time is. But, like, for him, he can say every day between these times, I will be doing this. But, like, your job or having kids or other things make,
Sure.
Tim Ferriss can say, sorry, I can't do 11 a.m. It's my scheduled time for something else. Whereas you or I would be like, no, I can't really say no to that person, but.
Well, we could, right? But if we're coming from a mindset of scarcity, i.e., I can't say no because then they won't be there. That's scarcity versus a mindset of abundance of.
Okay. Talk about that. I'd love to wrap up with that. Yeah.
Right. Like, abundance is, first of all, one of the things that happens to us, I think, in this world is we get myopic, we get small, we get, like, what's in front of us. Like, it's ridiculous how many people there are and how much opportunity is there in this world. Like, it's astounding, right? Like, I live in Sarasota, and you go out on Longboat Key here, and it's just like mansion after mansion after mansion after mansion, and like, they are lived in for like 2 weeks a year, right? So there is a ton of money out there for people, right? Because those people found it. They figured out how to get it, right? I don't know how, right? I have no clue, right, for them what it is, but that's, for me, like, that abundance mindset versus that scarcity mindset. Like, that's always been a thing. And I think that comes a lot from Two things: faith, right? Trusting in your process and what's around you, trusting in good of people, having faith in others, right? That's number one. And then number two is like having confidence in yourself, right? So having that faith and that confidence in yourself that you're going to find a way, because you always do, right? You have all the luck you need. You are here, right? Tony Blair, Yale University, commencement speech, right? You have all the luck you need. You are here.
Yeah. Thank you. That's helpful. So then let's wrap up here with going into 2022. What would be your advice to people? I'm not saying about social media, but just in general, going into this year with the tough years we've had, we're obviously all hoping that 2022 is going to be, I don't want to say a better year than 21 and 20, but let's say like a more safer environment, healthy, happier. Well, I don't want to say happier, but just what would be your advice going into 2022?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you say that it has been, I get that the pandemic has been a different experience for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, they've lost loved ones. They have lost their jobs. They have, like real tough times have happened. But I've also seen the other side. The pandemic was spectacular for people too, because they got out of their cars, they got to reconnect with their families, they got to be more present, right? They got to, there's a lot of like anything that is tough, right? There's the other side to that. Right? I always think about when you're in something that you don't really like, what that really is doing is giving you an opportunity to see what you do want. Right. And so oftentimes what we do is we look at, oh, this stinks. Take that next step and go, okay, if you flipped it around and it was opposite, what would it look like? Okay, let's drive towards that. Gives us that direction.
Yeah.
Right.
So true.
And so that's one of those things. So for me, I think, 2022, if there was things you didn't like, or if it was a tough year for you in 2021, take stock of that and go, okay, well, what would the flip of that be? This is what I don't want. I'm pretty clear about that. I don't want it to be this way, or this way. What could I do to flip that on its head? And what does that look like if it was the 180 degrees the other way? Right.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful. Great. Okay. So where can people, follow you in future, find out more, learn from you? Obviously, we'll put the previous episode. Tell us a bit more about where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. So I've mentioned Limitless Minds several times during this podcast. The website for that is www.thinkbig-gofar.com, thinkbig-gofar.com. Or you could just type in Limitless Minds in Google. It'll pop right up. For myself, Twitter, it's at Lifrak Attack. And then my email, should I give my email? Am I doing that?
I'd probably say I probably wouldn't do that. I would probably say if someone wants to email you, they email me and I'll be doing
I told you, I've been under it. I haven't been in the podcast game in ages.
I don't know. Maybe that's just me as a woman that I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. But
perfect. Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, if someone wants to connect with you, yes.
They can get me on Twitter, and then on LinkedIn, it's just my name, Joshua Lifrak.
Okay.
So you can find me there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me, and appreciate the updates, appreciate the conversation today, the vulnerability, and excited to see what the next few years bring to you now that I don't want to say your wings have been clipped, but no.
They've expanded. See, there it is. Means scarcity. Clip means you can't fly anymore.
That's true. Okay, so the wings have been expanded. Okay, see what happens now. So let's see.
Yeah, I'm the pheasant. I'm the pheasant and the pheasant and the pheasant farms. I went to Ithaca College, master's degree, and I used to run around Cornell. I was training for a half marathon, and there was they had a pheasant farm there, and it was like, like the first pen had a roof on it. The second pen was taller and it had a roof on it. The third pen was the same height as the second pen and it had no roof on it. I'm like, why don't they have a roof on that one? They're like, after they go to the second pen, they think that if they fly too high, they're going to hit their head and get hurt. So they don't ever fly that high.
Elephant thing. Yeah. They've learned helplessness, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm expanding my wings.
I'm not a pheasant. The pheasant that didn't get.
I escaped the.
All right. Well, I appreciate you.
I'm going to touch the cloud. That's fun.
There you go. Keep going to touch those clouds. Thank you so much. And we'll chat again soon. Hi, friends. Just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. Thank you so much to Josh for joining me today and to you for listening as we are rounding out the end of this year. I appreciate your listenership, your loyalty, your support, the encouragement that you give to me in whatever way you decide to do it. It is much appreciated. And I hope this episode provided some comfort for you if you are working through any of those difficult things. Again, I will put a link in the show notes to Josh's previous episode for you to go check that one out. I will put all links in the show notes at runningforreal.com/episode 280. And I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, who links to will also be in the show notes. And you can go support them by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina to get yourself 5 free travel packs and a 1-year free supply of vitamin D and K2, critical at this time of year. And you also can get that offer in US, Canada, and Europe. I also want to thank Inside Tracker. You can get 25% off at Inside Tracker by going to insidetracker.com/Tina. And I recently had my blood work done and it was so worth doing. It unlocks some mysteries for me and I definitely encourage it. And thank you to Zencastr for sponsoring this episode. You can go to zencastr.com and use code running for real. That's the word running for real. That will get you 30% off the first 3 months of this platform that we know and love here at Running for Real. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope you are celebrating whatever holiday you celebrate in the best way possible for you. I will see you on Monday for a Together run and see you next week for a regular episode. Thanks so much.